All right, so for those of you I haven't met, my name is Glenn Seninger. I am currently serving as the president of U Alumni, and in partnership with our networking and careers group, we have been fortunate enough to have three amazing guest speakers and panelists today for your education and enjoyment. And so before we get to the program, I think, you know, every time I come onto campus, I'm reminded by this great institution. I'm a graduate. I actually teach. I see some of my students here, former students. I teach a class here in the business school on sales management. So I am committed to this institution. And I think we forget a lot of times, if we turn back the hands of time and remember, you know, the foundations of the university and really kind of how we got not only our sports teams' names, but we remember the native inhabitants of this valley that were here long before anyone came, and those were the members of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. And we just like to pay tribute and honor. If you're watching virtually, or we have members of the tribe here, we'd like to pay our respects and thank you for the partnership. And we're just grateful to be able to continue on and carry that great tradition of the Ute name and representing those tribal nations, so thank you. The other little qualifier I want to give before we start and get to the real reason you're here, because you didn't come to hear me do the introduction, but we will be talking about a number of topics today that deal with important things related to mental health. And today's session is not intended for a counseling session. It's intended to share experiences of our guests to hopefully help you understand how to navigate some of the challenges, or you may have friends or family members navigating those challenges. If you're in need of any professional help, we advise you to seek out that on campus, and also we have referrals for professionals that are available in the community that can help with some of these related topics. Okay. So with that, let me just introduce quickly our panelists, and then we will go kind of have them tell, if you're okay, tell a little bit of your stories and updates. So there is a common thread amongst each of our panelists, and they were all three gymnasts here at the U. They all played football here at the U, and some going back as far into the Mountain West days. So we all think that everything existed in the Pac-12. Well, there was a day when we did play in a different conference, and our big rivalry game ended up being the school down south. And so these three gentlemen have been in many big games athletically, but they've also had to transition and set their experiences professionally later after leaving the university, and you're going to hear their stories today. So joining me today, Dave Kozlowski, graduate of 97. Let's give a big hand for Dave. Welcome, Dave. Graduate of 97, if I got that right. And then also Nate Orchard. Give a big hand for Nate. Welcome, Nate. Appreciate you being here. And then also Kenneth Scott. Give a big hand for Kenneth. All right. So without further ado, let me turn the mic over. You have one, I think, right there. Is it hot? Are we good to go with Dave's mic? We'll go with Dave. Dave will give us a little bit of an update, a little story about his background and his experience. We'll go then to Nate and then to Kenneth. So we'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Okay. First and foremost, I want to thank all the great people in the university for having us here at this panel. This is kind of like our dream opportunity, because every single one of us, as you'll find out, we've been through some interesting life experiences and been through a lot of pain. I think that's something that, regardless of what we've been through, hopefully you can find some connection with that, because at the end of the day, I think everybody can agree, pain is kind of the one thing that connects us all. Regardless, race, religion, if you go through a hard time and someone else goes through a hard time, you can find some connection in that. And so we're trying the best to do our part to take our pain and to turn it into some sort of purpose and passion. So thank you for this event. We really feel honored to be here. So as you said, my name is David Kozlowski, but I don't know if it's Kozlowski or Kozlowski, to be totally honest, because I was adopted. And when you're adopted and someone's willing to give you a house and food and a name, you just say, okay. You don't ask questions about how to pronounce a name or whatever. So a little bit about me. I'm from Southern California, Carlsbad, Oceanside area, if any of you guys are familiar with that. My adoption was a secret all the way up until I was here at the U. Only my best friend knew I was adopted, because I was actually, to be totally honest, I was ashamed of it. And at the time when I started playing at the University of Utah, I didn't know about this thing. It starts with a D and it ends with an oppression. depression. I had no idea what depression was, no clue. Well, fast forward in my career, I struggled with what's called concussions ever since I was a little kid. And when I was here at the University of Utah, I had my 15th concussion. I was in a coma. I had 3 during the season, or during the year. Had a coma snowboarding at Snowbird. See, I had concussions. There's proof right there. And I was life flighted to the University of Utah Hospital. I was there for about a day in a coma. Luckily, I came out of it, and after a lot of psychological testing, they told me my career is over and I can never play football again. And it was the saddest and the most relieving moment of my life. I'd been keeping the secret that I was, adopted. No one really knew it. And then I started to open up and talk to people because they sent me to see a mental health professional, a counselor. And back then, suicide was not something that people really talked about. And especially athletes and, well, I shouldn't say just athletes. I think anyone that feels that you got to be strong all the time. If you're raised like, no one asking you about your feelings and stuff, and you feel like you have to be strong. And I got to a point where I found out that being vulnerable is actually really valuable. Like if you're vulnerable, you can connect with people on a whole different level. So after I went through lots of counseling, I ended up finishing my career because they told me I could never play football again because I had a speech impediment for 15 years to be exact, and I was going through a lot of mental health problems. And then I decided to go to graduate school and be one of those feeling doctors guys. Now I can tell you when I was growing up, I had 2 brothers that played in the NFL, and because I was adopted by my grandmother, just to be clear. So I have a Samoan grandmother. She got remarried, had a baby out of wedlock, got remarried, and his name was Kozlowski. And so I was lucky to be raised by my grandmother. So she raised me in the Samoan culture, and she taught me something at a very young age, and it's called Fa'asamoa. Fa'asamoa means all is one. And what she explained to me, she said, when you're at school, because I don't know if you guys knew this, but sometimes athletes can be a little, what's it called, cocky? And when I came to the University of Utah, I can tell you there was not a mirror that I met that I didn't like. I liked myself a little bit too much. But then after I went through what I went through, I started to look at people different. I didn't see people based upon what they looked like or dressed like. I started to see people as like, man, maybe they're just like me. I went from thinking, what could I do to get people to like me, to fearing that when people met me, that they wouldn't know that I liked them. I wanted to make a different, impact on people. So I decided to go to graduate school to become a counseling therapist, psychologist, that type of thing. And so now I practice as a licensed family therapist. I specialize with teens and young adults, specifically suicide prevention, the LGBTQ plus community. And being from San Diego, coming to Utah, I was like, man, when I moved back to Utah, I thought, gosh, everybody's perfect here. Families don't have problems. I'm not going to have any clients. I was wrong. Turns out there's a lot of stuff going on in Utah where people are struggling just like in Southern California when I was from. Because when I graduated, I moved home. And when I came back, so I was so happy to come back to the University of Utah, and that's how this young man, and I'll turn it over to him in just a second, he and I met. And I won't give his story, but he went through some really difficult times when he played here at the University of Utah. And like the stud that he is and the great person he is, he had a very serious injury going into his senior year. And instead of just sitting there and feeling sorry about himself, he was reached out to by a young person, because I have a nonprofit for teens where I put on social support groups for teens. And this guy said, hey, you should come to these nonprofit groups and talk to teens. So he came to the group thinking he's going to give a lecture and talk to teens. Next thing you know, he's crying. All the kids are like, wow, that big tough guy's being vulnerable and crying. He's like, did you trick me and bring me here for therapy? I'm like, little bit, kind of. And next thing you know, we became friends. And before long, I got a radio show here at ESPN 700 where late at night, I'd interview former athletes and local celebrities about their drug addictions, their mental health problems, and he was my co-host. And so throughout years, we've been trying to do everything we can to help teenagers, young adults. In fact, today we just spoke at Olympus High School. We did an assembly there. I talked about connections and stuff, and he talked about the same stuff and the struggles he went through and performed an amazing song on stage. The whole entire kids were turned up over there. They were loving it, having a great time. So that's it, my story in a nutshell. So I want to turn the time over to Mr. Kenneth Scott, and thank you for a few moments. Appreciate it.
Nah, just playing. I'm not gonna rap for you guys. I could. Yeah, we could. But like he said, my name is Kenneth Scott. Been here from 2010 to 2015. But before I get into that part, moving forward, I like to give you guys a little backstory about where I came from. So originally, I was born in Galveston, Texas. I wasn't supposed to be born in Galveston. I actually was raised in Houston, but since my mother had complications to her health, she had to be expedited to a hospital in Galveston that can take care of the illness that she had. And her illness was lupus. Anybody in here know what lupus is? Okay, so I see a few of them. So lupus is a chronic disease. So basically what a chronic disease means that there's no cure for it. The only way you can kind of live through it is try to figure out ways to manage it. And the only ways you can manage it is by connecting with individuals, seeing what they're going through, what pains and stuff that they can, elaborate on. But also, in addition to it being a chronic disease, it's an autoimmune disease. And so for your immune system that's supposed to protect you from the cold, the flu, and things of that nature, making sure it's not devastating, it's now attacking you. So basically, it's your own body attacking yourself. And so I had to grow up from a young age and be a caregiver to my mother ever since I was 4 years old. My father wasn't in my life. My father dibble-dabble in and out of prison. And it wasn't until later I understood his story and the reason why he got to where it was at because of his mental health issues. And so I didn't understand that piece. So growing up from Houston, transitioning to living in California in San Bernardino County, me and my mother, we lived off food stamps, Section 8 housing, welfare programs, and things of that nature. And for me, growing up, I didn't really think nothing of it. I thought that's just how life was. I was being in the lobby of my mom's dialysis center, checking in on her as she's being dialyzed on the machine as they're putting the blood in, removing, taking blood in, taking blood out to like purify it, and make sure it's whole. And so early on, I didn't really understand that. And then along with that, no matter what things that we went through, my mother's favorite thing that she always did was be of service to others. She felt that in order to make herself feel good, she wanted to return the favor to someone else. So I'll give you a quick story about it. So one day we went to a store called Food for Less. It's a grocery store, something like Harmon's or like H-E-B or something like that. And we were in line, about to buy our food stamps. And someone in front of us looked to be pretty well off, and their car gets declined. They're like, no, my car's not declined. And then he tried several other cars decline. And so my mom reached in her purse and was like, hey, you can use our food stamps in order to buy food from you. And I'm looking at my mom, I'm like, yo, we only got a couple $100s a month for food. You gonna get this man on food stamps but that's just the sort of person my mother was. She would care for people outside of herself. And that's similar like to my whole family. We're all about service and how can we advocate for others and support them in order to educate them to become better within themselves. So growing up, that was my main motto. It's like, okay, how can I give my family, meaning my mother, going through what she was going through, sacrificing meals for me to eat when she couldn't eat, or my auntie who gave up going to college to be able to take care of me, or my grandmother who have to work 2 to 3 shifts in order to provide for us? Like, how can I give them a return on their investment in me? And so for me, early on, football was that for me. It was like a purpose of mine, like so I can use that as a vehicle to get to that destination to where everything that we went through, I can be able to pay it off so that they can be able to live the lives that they wanted to live. Instead of surviving, we can now actually live. And so fortunate for me, going through high school stages in that standpoint, I was a national recruit. I committed to here when I was 16 years old. My mother was peed off. She called the coach and was like, how dare you take a commitment from a 16-year-old? And I'm like, Mom, chill. You're going to make me lose my scholarship. Like, come on now. And so, but coming here was like the best decision for me. Because growing up in the area that I was, in Section 8 and public housing, right, it's gangs, violence, you name it, like drugs and all that. So for me, I don't know what it was. I'd never seen Utah before, never been to Utah before. I was telling people earlier, I didn't even know where Utah was on the map. I had to Google where Utah was on the map. But for me, it was something inside of me was like, man, Utah might be the place for me. So committed here when I was 16, had a highly touted recruit, 34 ranked in the nation at my position. So, high school was pretty fun for me. So transitioning to catch up to what Kaz was saying, I got to a position in my freshman year where I was projected and making my way up to the 2 deep. And the first week before the first game, I ended up breaking my ankle. And all the pressures and the anxiety of, man, I'm trying to make it to the NFL in order for my mom and them to live out the life that they want to live. Now it's that view is kind of gone. It's kind of getting foggy, right? It's diminishing. And it's like at that point in time, I was going through it. And my position coach at the time, Aaron Roderick, he was there for me. He took me into his house. He fed me because I was at the point where I wanted to leave. I didn't want to be here no more. And so later on in the spring, with all this energy, I'm an energy guy. And so I'm passionate. I'm out in the field, and I'm just lashing out negatively, even though I'm feeling like it's positive. And I found myself getting suspended indefinitely and sitting across from a lady that I barely knew from a can of paint on a suede couch, just expressing various emotions, right? They admitted me into counseling for my mental health. And in order for me to get back on the team, I had to show I was emotionally competent in order for me to come back and play. And so fast forward to the year 2013 when I suffered my second injury to my other leg, when I had to learn how to walk all over again and getting to a point where the year before I was creating some buzz, people started to know I was getting letters, and I was getting, not letters, I was getting text messages and calls from agents saying, look, if you have a year like this next year with Dennis Erickson coming in, oh man, future's bright. To have all that, and in the first game of the year, to get it wiped out again with another injury, man, I was in a deep, dark hole. And it came to a point where I met Cause and Brandon in the Quit Tripping group that allowed me to show me that, football isn't the only vehicle that I can use to get to my destination. Like I was talking to a guy that had several vehicles in his garage, and he uses one to go to the store, uses one to go whatever. Like we all have different vehicles in which we can use to reach our destination. And my hindsight in my mind was like, only football. But going through therapy, it gave me the clarity to know that I have multiple vehicles in my garage. Like I got a Porsche, I got the Bentley. Obviously, they ain't real, but meaning in different careers, I have different vehicles that I can use in order to get to my destination. And so providing that mental health and that therapy and that clarity, it was good for me. It allowed me to see more than football. So to kind of conclude everything, when I was in the sport, the reason why I got the name Batman, the Dark Knight that people always, call me the name by. It was from a teammate, and it was because all the things that I went through and the strength that I showed in those trials and tribulations, and me being human, because we all know that Batman doesn't have superpowers. He doesn't. The only thing Batman is known for is his grit, his tenacity, his willingness to serve his community. That's what he's known for. Like he's a person of the people. And so they gave me the name of the moniker. And so for me, like in my career, I wanted to be more known off that field, meaning being in the community, detention centers, suicide prevention groups, educationally. I got 2 degrees, right? Making sure I covered every aspect outside of that football field, because I knew at some point in time, because I already dealt with what I dealt with in the game, I knew it was going to come to an end, because 100% of all athletes has to retire at some point in time. Everybody's gifted a certain amount of time, whether you played 1 year or 10 years professionally, collegiately, you all have to retire at some time. So for me, having that clarity within the moment, it helped me transition outside of it. And I'm sure those questions will pop up later on in regards to the transition from the sport. But that's just a little backstory of, where I came from, where I am now, to conclude a little bit about my story. And I'll pass it on to my good guy, my cousin Nate.
Good stuff, Kay. How's everybody doing? Everybody good? Everybody's good? Awesome. Thank you all for being here, and I want to thank the folks online for joining us as well. You guys are missing out of the food. Should have showed up. Cookies are amazing, K. Scott even said. Yep. But Dave, K. Scott, it's good to be up here with you guys, man. Really, it's a point to where, it's nice to be up here because I don't get to do this too often. And when I do, it gets kind of emotional when I do. So I'll try to hold that back today. But being up here, we get to be vulnerable with you and share our life story. So I'm really excited to share my story. At the end of the day, I know we all have a story in here. You all have a story. And like Dave said, I hope there's something you can take from our story and our message and apply it to your life. And hopefully it helps you along your journey. But I was born in Los Angeles, California, in Inglewood. Was raised by, multiple people. But I had one brother. He was in a gang called TCG, so he was constantly running the streets. My mom was married, divorced multiple times. I'm a witness and a victim of domestic violence, right? So there was a lot of that going on in my house. witnessed my mom be beat multiple times by my stepdad. Seen her get hit over the head with a 2x4. I've been hit with a 2x4, got scars on my head. Living in Inglewood wasn't ideal. So what really brought us to Utah, and I'm kind of speeding this up, my brother was a stud football, basketball player. He got a full ride scholarship to UCLA to play basketball. But instead of accepting that offer at 16, he chose to get married. Met his wife here and moved here, and that's what brought us all here. And really, to get out of a gang, you got to be married. And so he decided to get married, didn't finish high school, dropped the scholarship, and moved here to Utah, and that's what brought us here. And during our time here my brother is 16 years old, and I'm only 8 or 9, and I'm living with him and a caregiver to his children. I didn't have much of a childhood. For me, it's like I didn't even go to school, because growing up with my mom in California, it was all construction. I did manual labor, built walls, tore up driveways, laid concrete, door to door, knocking on people's doors, handing out business cards. Like, that was my life as a kid. I didn't start going to school until I was here. Went to Parkview Elementary starting in 6th grade. And sports for me didn't start until about 7th grade. And, granted, here I am. I'm a caregiver to my 2 nieces, living with a 16, 17-year-old. And that was my life, right? And it's like K. Scott said, you don't know any different. There were kids who seemed like they were well off or didn't know any better, and yet I was happy with my situation and my circumstance. The time came, we got evicted from our home in Glendale. We had to move back to California, but I had just started AAU basketball and football for the first time, and I didn't want to leave that because I knew if I went back to California, there'd be nothing there for me. So my neighbor across the street, who was an amazing human being, had a few too many to drink. I'm 12 years old. I knock on his door. I ask him if he could give me a ride up to my coach's house, just here in Sugar House. He said no, but he said, you can drive. I said, okay. Here I am, 12 years old. The only thing I've done as far as driving is play Grand Theft Auto. And I was like, all right, let's see how it goes. So come up 21st South and made it all the way up. So I dropped him off to his girlfriend's house, and then I walked, a few blocks to my coach. And, it took a lot of courage. But I knocked on his door and asked if I could live with him. And he said no initially, and then eventually came around, and they took me under their wings. But that right there was really a turning point in my life, because here I am, half black, half Tongan, coming from Inglewood, California, where drive-bys were the norm, living with this Caucasian family on the east side, eating English muffins for breakfast, and I had no idea what English muffins were. Slap some butter and some cinnamon on that thing, and it's over. And it just changed my life. I went from eating top ramen to, eating pretty good. I mean, at the end of the day, for my birthdays, all I wanted was McDonald's, and so they were still confused by that. But, talk about a culture shock and all these things. And so here I am transitioning into high school. I get my first scholarship offer from the University of Utah as a freshman, and it was from Coach Witt after a basketball game. And, the pressure slowly starts to build. The attention's getting there nationally. And in the meantime, from my freshman year to my senior year of high school, I feel a sense of responsibility, right, for my mom, for my brother. Here we are living, in Inglewood, going through all these things together, to now me away from them. Granted, they were happy that I went, but at the same time, I felt so obligated to take care of them. So in high school, I figured out ways to help them out. Anything I got from doing chores, I would give them my money, anything, just to pay the rent or put food on the table, even for my nieces. And that pressure continued on through college. Here I am, there was no NIL deals and guys getting paid handsomely. We struggled with our $1,500 checks. You got an extra 100 if you got married, so there was some incentive there. So that was our life. But I gave everything I had to my family. And, fast forward back to high school, there was a moment in time between my sophomore and junior year, some deep vulnerability and a sense of not knowing my purpose and who I am and why am I even here. right? So there came a point where I almost took my life, my own life, where I'm sitting in the tub, I got the knife, I still got the scars on my wrists, started to cut myself, and I'm like, man, look, why am I here? Why am I doing this? You know, they don't love me. My mom doesn't love me. She left me here with these people. Like, what am I doing this for? And a voice came to my ear. I'm sorry. And a voice came to my ear and said, I need you. It's like, you're worth it. And that's all I needed, right? And so it pushed me through high school. It's like, okay, you know what? There's a bigger purpose. There's a bigger purpose. I get through college. My sophomore, junior year, again, same thing. I'm feeling all this pressure from my family to do these things, to help them, to do this, to do that. Things they're asking of me, and I'm just like, you know what? I have to get back. You know, I need to. I'm supposed to. Came to a point where, you know, right before camp, I just broke down again. I was like, you know what? I can't do this. I can't deal with it. So I tell my athletic trainers, I check myself into uni, and I'm in there for about 3 days. And I'm telling you, it was probably the best 3 days of my life, because I was able to find the true me, and the reason for being stronger today is because of those times I spent in there, because, I mean, it allowed me to open up. And really, that's all it was being able to communicate with people, expressing my feelings about who I am, you know, why I'm here, and be able to just open up in a way that I've never had before. Because growing up in the Polynesian culture is like, you know, you cry before you even just express your feelings. Like, you don't even talk about feelings, because whatever we're going through, we're going to go through it, we'll figure it out, but we don't got time to talk about it. And so that was me, you know, going through high school, college. And then the moment I got married, it really changed my life. My wife really helped me find who I am, and has allowed me to open my mind and my heart to people, and to even my own children. It has allowed me to be a better father. And being now in the NFL in these past 8 years, I've learned so much about mental health and about taking care of yourself. And in return, you take care of those around you. And so I'm just happy to be here today to spread my message and answer any questions and share my story with you guys. Thank you.
Can I say something real quick? So this is happening live, right? You guys watch this live? Thank you so much, Nate, man. Like, really thank you. Because Nate and I actually, we just met today, like, for this. And in the bathroom, we're talking. We're like, dang, we got a lot in common. And unfortunately, we have that thing that you just said in common, too. I was also up at uni. You know, that's why I was here. And in fact, if it wasn't for Coach Ron McBride, not only did this university save my life, Coach Ron McBride saved my life after my suicide attempt. So I just want to say I love you, man, and thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother. Love you.
All right. Well, I think that was, thank you for sharing that, all three of you. Very heartfelt, very vulnerable. I don't think we would expect that, hearing that from men of your stature, but thank you for being willing to share honestly your stories. We like to ask everyone to come that's standing. Come up here. We have seats. Come forward. Come and have a seat. We're now going to transition into more of kind of having some questions, if you're okay. And I am going to turn the microphone over to a colleague of mine, Danae Hayes, who serves with me on the U Alumni board. So let's give a big round of applause to Danae. And we'll turn the time over to her to get the questions going and maybe share some more insights. Danae?
Thank you so much, David, Ken, and Nate. We appreciate your time. We know that you've got super busy lives, and I would express from everyone in the audience, thank you so much for sharing your stories, having the vulnerability to know that there's emotions out there and we all express them, and it's all part of our lives. So we absolutely appreciate your time and your honesty being here today. Like Glenn said, my name is Danae Hayes. I'm a U alum and part of the U Alumni Board of Governors. I'll be moderating and answering questions that we had submitted beforehand, and any questions from the audience, as well as those of you who are participating virtually and online. So I'll kick us off and start us off with a question, and then feel free. There will be a microphone being passed around. Just raise your hand, it'll come straight to you, and then any of those questions that are submitted online, I will get through my cell phone up here. Thank you. So in terms of the first question, at your experience here at the University of Utah, what were those classes that really helped ground you and keep you thinking about what I need to keep doing in terms of my future and maintain your place here at the University of Utah and not leave?
Want me to go first? Sure.
Please.
So after I had been told that my career was over because of head trauma and I had a speech impediment and a learning disability where I could take in information. It's cognitive processing disorder is what they call it, but I just couldn't get it out. I was able to finish my degree here, and I took Psych 101 like everybody, when you're coming through. But I got to pick a class at the end, and I had such a positive experience with my therapist and counselor and being at the University of Utah Psychiatric Hospital. I was like, let me take a different type of psychology class, and I took a relational psychology class. It was after and during that class, it's where I figured what I knew what I wanted to do. Because I didn't realize at the time, we know a lot more about relationships now. A lot of great universities like UCLA and Harvard University have done a lot of research that shows that the better your relationships, the better your life. Like you literally can live 8 to 15 years longer if you have good relationships. Because if you get cancer and people like you, there's going to be a GoFundMe account, there's going to be a bake sale, there's going to be a lot of stuff happening to help you out. But if people don't like you and you've been mean to people, you made like $29 in that GoFundMe account. You may not have a lot of people helping you out. And so in that relationship with psychology class, they're like talking about the importance of like family relationship and being adopted and, having my mother choose drugs over me and being in state custody in California. I was like, yeah, that would have been really good to have a mom in my life. Like I didn't know how important it was because you say you just get used to what you have. And I just got used to my Samoan grandmother yelling at me in some weird pidgin language I could barely understand. And I didn't know that relationships were really that important. And so that was the class that really led me into my career. So yeah, there was definitely a class that changed my whole entire outlook on life. So.
Yeah, for me, my first degree here was human development and family studies. I'm really big, like I mentioned, on giving back. And so I wanted to, like Kaz was saying, I wanted to learn about the development of humans, but also people from lower socioeconomical statuses, like people that were in my position, and how can we help uproot them to where they feel important, give them hope, give them strength to overcome their situations. And so after I accomplished that, I then took economics so that I can marry the two, because data is so important, statistics and stats, and also learning about the money. It's like, how can I marry these two in order to not only understand someone's background, but provide the data and the analytics and the stats to be able to improve it. So I try to, figure out of those two, how can I marry them? And that's what's getting me to where I am now, as far as the relationship building, having that interconnection with individuals, understanding their backgrounds, where they're from, to improve on their social health of building, maintaining, and improving. So my classes definitely help.
Oh man, my classes, I don't know what to say. Look, I'll tell you this, and it's nothing against sociology degrees by any means, but my parents were like, look, we just know way too many athletes who just get the degree just to get it because it's the easiest thing to do, right? And so they said, if you want to stay in this house, you will not be allowed to have a sociology degree. You have to get something better, or just get something else.
That was the degree
that
athletes took.
Right, exactly, and it was, and I understand that. Okay, I see where you're coming from. So going into my sophomore, junior year, I declared economics. Economics was my degree. I thought, you know what, it's the next best thing to business, and I loaded up each semester was like 18 credits, and it was just jam-packed. And there wasn't one in particular. Granted, I wasn't the best student. Like I worked my tail off, and I made the most of it. But I grew an appreciation for the professors on this campus. Man, they understood what I was going through. I had a kid at home, going into my senior year. Anyway, season ends, and I fail one of my classes, so I'm a class short before graduating. So I have to take another course in the spring. And granted, in the spring, I'm prepping for the NFL Combine. I'm training crazy in California, out in Carlsbad, and I'm taking my class online. And then when I come back, I end up taking my test here. But anyways, it was just one of those like moments where you realize, like, okay, if you really want to do this, you got to put in the work. Because I know so many guys that just came up a class short, but I just have just a fond appreciation for this university, for the professors, for my tutors and everyone just pushing me to get it because, you know, it's something that at the end of the day I'm so proud of because I'm the first in my family, my biological family, to graduate high school and to have a degree from the university. And so that meant a lot.
Are there any questions from the audience? To continue with more questions that we received ahead of time, tell us about what was the most difficult hurdle that you overcame as you were transitioning from the university setting and being an athlete into your career.
The death of my ego.
Please say more.
Yeah. You probably fill in the blanks right there. Yeah, I mean, for me, when your identity is this thing, but you know secretly you don't know who you are, but you're just known for that thing, the last thing you want to do is face real life. And for me, it was like, I didn't even really like football, to be totally honest. I'd prefer to surf and skateboard on the beach in California. I was good enough that we'll give you a college degree. My brothers played in the NFL, so yeah, I'll do that. But it was really hard for me coming from here where, you know, athletes do have an advantage of being recognized, and, you know, you go to a party and, you know, because I was really insecure and unconfident, I absolutely was, no doubt about it. You know, sometimes when people act cocky, they're really insecure, at least about that situation. And I just act cool at a party here. Well, I went back to San Diego. Nobody cared that I played football at the University of Utah. That did not impress anyone. It's like, do you play for the Chargers? Nope. Okay, next. Right? So for me, it was just dealing with I had to figure out who I was, and I did not do a lot of work on that until I started to do therapy. So yes, for me, the death of my ego. That was a really hard transition. It was mental.
I will have to add on to that because my turning point came at multiple turning points. So after my senior season here at the University of Utah, I had the opportunity to be with the Los Angeles Rams. And then when I was with the Los Angeles Rams, I got released because I failed my physical due to my prior injuries. And then months later, I joined the CFL, and same thing. I got released because I failed my physical. And then during that time, my mother had passed away, which is the driving force for everything that I wanted to do. And also at that time, I was about to have a kid on the way. I didn't have no job. So since my mother passed away, I didn't have a home to go back to. And so I'm gracious enough to have a scholarship donor family that provided a house for me to live with them because I didn't have nowhere to go. So they opened up their house to me to where I can be able to at least lay my head, get back on my feet. And so that transition part for me was like, dang, here you go from being Batman in the Dark Knight to you're just Bruce Wayne now with no money, no job, no nothing. Broke Bruce Wayne, you know? So that was probably the hardest thing for me. It was like, man, trying to figure out, okay, who is K. Scott? Who's Kenneth Scott? And so trying to go back to that core of what I was like, going back to what my mom used to always, you know, preach was like, the first thing you need to do, what we always did, if we felt down in ourselves, it's better to try to help someone else. And so for me, my transition was about doing that. It's like, okay, I know I'm feeling a certain way by myself, so let me go help somebody else. So I started advocating and, you know, helping individuals that may be dealing with some uncertainty in their life in the transition. So that's my spiel right there.
So for me, I've been fortunate transitioning out of college. I was drafted in the second round in the NFL to Cleveland. And the biggest thing that I had to learn just transitioning from college to the pros, and here I am playing at the highest level, is just time management, right? Being here at college, like, you literally have a counselor lay out your classes, you got tutors set up, you got strength coaches, this is a routine. I had none of that, and so everything I had to figure out for myself. How I train, how I sleep, how I eat, and if I wanted to play at the highest level and be the best, I had to make sure I was taking care of my body as such. And so I was able to, you know, pick people's brains and understand how they went about their off season, how they took care of their bodies, and all those things. But really, the biggest thing for me was just time management as I continue on my NFL career.
There's a lot of research that talks about burnout for athletes and that there's a lifespan of about 8 years. And there's a lot of athletes that start when they're kids, when they're 12 and younger, and grow up. And then by the time that they're in college, they're at those points of burnout. Can you talk about what were your drivers, and were there points in your careers that you dealt with burnout?
Yeah, I'd mentioned that I didn't even like football anymore, and obviously at one time I did. But yeah, the burnout is you're just doing the same thing over and over again. And like Nate said, when your whole entire life is mapped out for you, there's a part of you just wants to like do what you want to do. And I found graduating from the University of Utah, it was a great honor to have a diploma, and I was the first child of my grandmother that had a college degree, so you're excited, but you're so burnt out on just the regimen over, going to class, going to this, doing that. And when you get a degree, it's like, okay, great, I got a degree, but I'm a semi-professional adult. Like, I'm not like really a professional adult yet, and so I was burned out of just being told what to do all the time, and so I wanted freedom to do my own thing, but I found out really quickly that I didn't have the self-discipline to do that. And burnout really caused me, and I don't know what these guys would say, but burnout caused me to just get stuck on stupid. I was just numb to so many things, and so, yeah, that was definitely a big issue for me.
Yeah, so for me, it's a little different. So when it comes to me and my burnout, when it came to football, because of the reasoning for my driving factor of why I got into football, I never really experienced a burnout because I had so many setbacks that I had to always try to get back. Like with my injuries, it was always me having a challenge to overcome. So I never experienced a burnout. It was like, all right, here's another challenge, let's get after it. And so for me, I never experienced that. I just, until my mom passed away, that's when everything was gone for me. So like when she passed away, football was not relevant for me. I didn't even want to pursue it anymore. And so in terms of burnout, my burnout happened because the death of my mom. That's really what happened for me. And so in terms of football, because of my driving factor and my mom, that's why I never experienced it. But once that driving factor was gone, it was it for me.
Again, I'm fortunate to be playing in the NFL now 8 years, currently a free agent, but from ever since I was a young kid, when I first got my opportunity at 12 years old, I just always want to take people's heads off. I'm sorry, like I'm just a competitor, right? I'm just a competitor. Now in the classroom, maybe a little different story, but I'll give it all I got. It might be a B, C, C, D, but when it comes to sports and things like that, like I'm going to give you everything I have and some, and I want to win, and I want to win more than anything. And so that's just always been kind of my MO, and that's just how I attack life. And there comes a point where, you got to back down a little bit, but then after a little break, then I just give it that much more. I'm to the point now where I'm like, I got 4 kids, I got 2 girls, 2 boys, and I don't know, I just think we're such a, and I don't know if any of you have kids or anything like that, but I just try to instill in them just work. You want something, you got to work for it. My daughter's 9 years old. She does soccer, ballet. You want to be good at it, sweetheart, you got to work for it. You got to work. You got to put in the work because hard work works, and working really hard works. And so go out there, and if you want it, go get it. And so that's just been me. Burnout, still, I don't know, waiting on it, I guess.
But one thing I'll add to that, though, is that whoever put it in that question, burnout, you got to look at it, well, from my experience, it's kind of like a notification. Your cell phone says like, oh, you got 10% battery, 5% battery. If I look at those times when I was burned out, something was off. And when I started to understand why, like what was going on and why I was burned out, I could figure out what to do about it. But when people are just burned out and they just don't know why and they don't understand what exactly their system's trying to tell them, just like when you're hungry, your stomach grumbles. Right? It's trying to tell you something. So if you're experiencing burnout in school, whatever, you're probably gonna have to switch something up in your routine and find a different type of purpose. Because like I was there with him when that time of his life when his mom passed away, and I would say, you tell me what you think. I would say you were burnt out in trying to just hold everything together for your family and everything. So that was the burnout you were experiencing. At least that's what I saw as your friend.
Check. Yeah, so what he's experiencing, what's speaking about is the pressure that I was going through. And I recently did a TED Talk about 2 weeks ago about the pressure. And so, some pressure makes you feel expansive, motivated, like what Nate was saying, but some pressure makes your soul feel heavy. And that's what I felt when my mom passed away. And so there was times where I felt that expansiveness, but when my mom passed away, that's when my soul felt heavy. So dealing with that pressure, that's something you have to figure out how to manage. But Kaz is spot on about that pressure and having to deal with that.
Going back to your discussion around relationships and how important that is, a question that we received from virtually was, one thing I really miss from college is the relationships. We were more close with our team members. Have you been able to find those close relationships in other places after the U?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And by the way, I don't think this is unique. Would you guys agree with me? You don't have to play a sport to there's certain times in your life you have certain relationships. And then every relationship has a little bit of an expiration date. Maybe you still stay friends, but it's just not the same way anymore. So maybe you're a part of a club here at the U. Maybe you're a part of something, you have that time, and you're with your friends, and all those things are really going that way. But keeping up those relationships, I believe, is life-sustaining. You don't have to always talk to everyone. You don't have to keep in contact with your best friends from college all the time. But when you miss them, text them. Reach out to them. Tell them that your life is better because they're in it. And when someone texts me like that, I'm like, oh my goodness. I love it when I hear a song on a playlist and I'll call my friend, I'll start singing and leave a voicemail or something like that. And they call me back, remember that one time when we went to Lake Powell and all stuff like that. So yes, I mean, it's just, if you keep contact with your college relationships, if you miss people, don't just think about it, reach out to them. Because they miss you too, but life gets busy. And I think a lot of our best relationships, it's not that there is love lost, we just have other things and other responsibilities that take us away from them. But man, those good conversations, by the way, if you didn't know this, it produces a neurochemical inside of your brain called oxytocin. Oxytocin is the connection chemical. When someone gives you a hug, you get this connection chemical. And research has found that oxytocin is just like it increases your mood. So basically, if you're feeling down or depressed, and a friend calls you and say, hey, let's go get something to eat. You're like, no, I'm fine. Like, you're coming with me. Let's get something to eat. And then later on, you're thank you so much for calling me. I'm so glad we went and got something to eat. So it literally is life-sustaining by having connections and staying connected with people. Yes, I do miss my college relationships, but I try to stay connected to them.
Yeah. Honestly, I miss my college connections so much. When I was talking to Nate, it seemed like just yesterday he was at Highland High School being a wide receiver, and I'm watching him in his games, and when he's playing, I'm like, man, and I remember those moments, even those moments where guys will come in late and we have to run 34 gassers because people running late. But those are the times I miss, and I miss those moments, and I'm pretty sure, man, I try now that I'm transitioned, I try to culture those type of moments with the new communities, but those locker room moments live forever, and so I try to at least, man, create them as much as possible with a new community because they're everlasting. I talk to Travis Wilson all the time. I'm like, dude, what were you thinking when you jumped over that one dude in Michigan and your head just flew off? But I love Travis. That's my bro, and so definitely miss those relationships. And everything I try to do now is I try to foster that same one so I can have memorable moments just like that.
Oh, that's so true. And what I take away from that is just it's just being in the moment with the relationships you have now, because you got to cherish it, whether it's with friends, families, whatever it may be. Life's too short, people come and go, but I've just learned just over the years and after leaving college, because we had great times there, just enjoy the moments, be in the present, breathe in the present, because at the end of the day, relationships do evolve, your circle evolves, whatever career path you're going down. You might not be with the same buddy from your fraternity or whatever than you will 10 years down the road. And as a CEO of a business, you're not going to be, who knows, it might be different. I don't know. But just your circle evolves, and that's just how it is. But just keep those relationships alive as best as you can.
How have you maintained your relationship with the University of Utah? You've talked about your relationships with friends from school. How about the university itself?
I ain't gonna lie, I'm a social media guy, so every time, I followed everybody in regards to, the sports. And so I try to, like posts, comment as much as possible. Any recruit that I'm seeing is like, hey, man, go to Utah. And they be like, and it's cool coming from me because I'm not from Utah. I'm a minority. They're like, dude, like, you know, so they're looking at it from a different perspective. And then, so when I tell them, you need to check out Utah, they be like, they get curious. And so every time I go to high school football games out in Texas, I always tell them, dude, University of Utah changed my life, my perspective, everything. And because people always think, oh man, is everybody a Mormon? I'm like, dude, first get educated on everything, right? And so the university, I try to pay it back forward. So I don't live here, but you know, maybe one day somebody can do a real estate deal with me to where I can have a house out here to be able to do hybrid schedule. I'm just throwing that out there. You know, I can be some investors out there. Let's do an Airbnb, you know, K. Scott headquarters where I can come campaign and stuff and be a part of the alumni group. But I love this university. And the most important thing I love about the university is not only the alumni group, but the Crimson Club too. The people that donate their money to support athletes like me from our backgrounds, to get to know us, to provide that shelter in need. You know, my scholarship donor family, they're my real family. That 3 o'clock in the morning when I got that call about my mother passing, they were down the hall from me and they was like, oh, first class, we got to get you out of here and go home. They were there for both of my kids when they, you know, were birthed. And so this university means so much more to me than just a university. It's everything, you know, so I try to come back as much as possible. I literally paid for my flight 2 days ago. And so any opportunity I can to represent the university in the right way, I take full advantage of it.
I just try to be an OG to anyone that needs some advice. Like if you're graduating from the University of Utah and someone's like, hey, call Kaz, you know, he knows this person, whatever. People email me. I've, you know, on the down low, help some football players when they're going through some challenges. They'll be like, hey, can you talk to this kid for a second? I'm like, yeah, I got you, whatever. And but like, yeah, anyone that's like, hey, I'm graduating from this and that, you can shoot me an email. And if I know someone that knows someone that knows someone, because we're talking, obviously a big thing that we find out that improves your mental health is relationships. And a big thing that can really cause you self-doubt and struggle and burnout is the lack of connection and important relationships. And connections is valuable as money. And in some cases, it's even more valuable than money. And so anytime someone needs something from you, I've consulted on the Safe UT app. As a professional, I try to help out. And also, too, I don't always take free tickets. I buy my own tickets. You know, I buy gear. I want to support the university, even if it's a little bit here and there, and just do whatever I can that people need help with.
That's something I've always told myself I need to be better at, as far as giving back to the university and being more active. Being the NFL the last 8 years has just consumed so much of my time and the little window I have with my family in the off season. But that's why I'm sitting here today. I reached out to Bethany and Brandy. Thank you guys. Since I'm here and not on the team currently, I was like, you know what? Let me get out here with Batman and Kaz and give back and share my story and hopefully impact at least one person's life.
In terms of sharing your network, along with having a wide network of people that support you, can you talk about when you were in university and you had mentors and allies and sponsors that helped you get through and what they did for you in and outside of university?
Yeah, I had so many I can't even count. I mean, I guess people looked at me like, this kid needs help. They're like, hey, come here. You shouldn't say that or do that. Thank goodness there was not social media when I was coming up. I would have probably been asked to leave the university. Just joking. Point is, I had so many people that knew that like I needed help, and they would reach out to help me. And over time, I was able to accept help. And I think I don't know about you guys that are here in the university, I think it's kind of hard because I always told people, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree, I'm going to do all these things. And when I didn't know what to do, I thought I couldn't ask for help because somehow that was a sign of weakness or maybe something was wrong with me. And I think your guys' generation does a much better job at networking, but that was something where probably around my junior and senior year after I had those, mental health issues happen, I just started saying, I got to just go to people and say, you look like you figured something out. Will you help me? Can you point me in the right direction? And sometimes we are better at helping our friends, but we're not as good as asking for help. So that's the thing. If there's someone that you admire at the university, a professor, anyone, maybe they won't have the time to mentor you, but if they give you 5 minutes of their time, like there's a lot of, you guys all know what OGs are, right? Like there's a lot of OGs at this university that's like, give me 5 minutes, email them, talk to them, and you would be surprised when you ask someone that you want some of their experience because you value them, you look up to them, how much time they'll give you. I didn't say old. No. Oh, OGs don't mean old guys. Hey, Nate, why don't you tell them what OGs mean? No, it's not old guys. But actually, it really is. It technically is in some way. Yeah, I'm an OG in that way.
Yeah. And like he said, it's a plethora of people that helped me along my journey here. Starting off, obviously, with our coaches. You know, I mentioned one of my coaches, Aaron Roderick, who not only recruited me out of high school when I was a freshman, he was recruiting one of the seniors in my high school, and he was like, I'm going to come back and recruit you. You're going to come to Utah and it just so happened it happened. But not only him as my coach, but the counselors. You know, when I did get admitted into counseling and I had to go to sessions every week for, 6 months, you know, to get emotionally right, my professors, you know, a lot of people don't know, you know, now I do music, but when I first got here, my first adventure I wanted to get into was music. You know, I took music classes here with, I think his name is David Cottle. He's amazing. And then that's what branched me on to other professors. And so I started reaching out to professors just as a regular person, like not as an athlete or anything. And then also start connecting with my classmates. I had the luxury in a human development and family studies as a guy to be in a classroom with all females. So that was pretty cool because I got to learn their perspectives of a male and be able to be like their Dr. Phil in a way too. So that was pretty cool. So I expanded my network right there. So that was pretty cool. And then in terms of, you know, outside in the community, just reaching out to, like, me, I'm a big person in, you know, giving back to the youth. So detention centers, gang intervention, suicide prevention. So reaching out to that network because like I mentioned earlier, I knew that one day that that clock on that stadium was going to run out. So how I established myself outside of that was going to be the ultimate, message for me for my future. So I try to network as much as possible, and that's something I try to tell people now as far as athletes, especially with this NIL. The NIL money is a plus, but what you really want to build is those network and that connection so that when your job is said and done, like the CR England out there, how can you partner with them from a brand perspective? You know, so that's one of the things I try to tell people in regards to networking and leveraging your sponsors and et cetera. So that's it.
One of the big mentors for me, this is kind of sensitive, but Kalani Sataki. He was the defensive coordinator here and recruited me heavily coming out of high school. Great individual player coach. He's someone guys could always turn to, talk to for anything, as well as Coach Witt and a couple of guys in my position group. That's just those relationships as players that you cherish because you're constantly around these guys and they know you better than anyone. And so to be able to go to them about as I was getting married and having my first kid, these life advices, they could give that to me, and it was amazing. And being around campus, I mean, I've formed relationships with probably the most random people that you could think of, just like, you know, janitors in the what's the union at the union, and then Chef Pete who cooks all our meals, and people who are kind of behind the scenes. I've always been a behind the scenes kind of guy. I love the people who do the grunt work, who don't get the appreciation and show them the love that they need, because without them, I mean, we wouldn't be putting on our shoulder pads. We wouldn't have a clean stadium and doing the things that we do on a Saturday. But, you know, and as far as networking, I mean, when I was in the NFL, I've been in the NFL these past few years, I've always taken it upon myself during my off season from about January to April. I always network. I've done stuff with Morgan Stanley, Kurt McConkey, all kind of people where I'm just out networking, doing internships and things like that, picking their brains, learning about different industries for just prepping when my time comes and the NFL's over.
I just want to pause to make sure we don't have any questions from the audience before we continue with questions that we received.
I can tell. I see questions in their eyes. I can tell. I see questions in their eyes.
We've got a question right up here in the white,
right,
and then up here with the hat.
Right here too.
Great.
Thanks. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the issue of stigma around mental health, and you know, how have you feared stigma when talking about your own stories, and how did you get past that?
I'll talk real quick. This gentleman in the front row right here, part of the Ron McBride Foundation. So I didn't even talk about my suicide. I'm a mental health professional. It's what I eat, sleep, and breathe every day, and I didn't even talk about it until like 7 years ago. I was embarrassed of it. I was scared that like maybe people think weird, and what a hypocrite that is, right? And so I was faced with that even as a professional, and then finally when I started talking about it, I ran into the former University of Utah football coach, Ron McBride, which was a huge mentor for me. And we were talking one day at a restaurant, and the funny thing about it is when I had my suicide attempt, he didn't even know. He was just there at 4 a.m. and they couldn't tell him. It was like, he kind of figured it out, but he didn't really quite know. And so I broke down and told him that if it wasn't for you, like I wouldn't have been able to like get to the next place I'm at. And so he goes, hey, can we give you an award for this connection between the two of us? So I was the first recipient of the I Love You Man award from his foundation. And it went from something I was embarrassed about to an honor. And I think that's the hard thing about a lot of things that we go through in our life, especially if it's mental health related. Because mental health, you can't see it, touch it, or feel it. It's hard to be like, other things like, oh, you have a broken leg, it's 6 months to heal, it's this and that. When you go through a breakup, you don't know how long it's going to take that to heal. When you go through difficult stuff in life, so yes, the stigma is very real, and I've tried to do what I can, but I'm being honest with you guys, even me as a mental health professional, I struggled with being open about my struggles.
Earlier today, we were at an assembly and we were talking about if you made a mistake, what are you doing to make up for it? And so I spoke about my biggest mistake was letting my ego drive, not admitting that I had problems and trying to put on this persona or this avatar that, oh, I got it, everything is okay. And it came to a point when I was having a real hard discussion with my mom about you don't have to be so tough all the time. And I felt like during her time, she tried to be too strong so they won't look weak or anything. And I feel like in those moments, I needed her to be the most vulnerable. And so now that I have my kids, they see me cry. And my daughter, she comes up to me and she always just be like, Daddy, it's all right. She comes, wipes my tears and gives me kisses and stuff like that. And so that lets me know and reassures me that like, I'm confident in who I am and understand that it's not a stigma. Everybody goes through it and it's okay. That's what I learned, that it's okay to go through what you go through as long as you're growing through it. And you know, everybody goes through their problems or challenges that they may face in any point of time. And so for me, it's understanding and knowing that I'm not alone and people do want to hear it, and you don't have to be this, like I said, this figure and seem like you got it all figured out, because nobody got it all figured out. Because if it was, then they'll be having so much money in the world because they'll be selling it to everybody like, hey, I got it figured out. Here you go. You want to buy it? They'll be the richest person in the world. But nobody has it all figured out. But the key to connection is being open and vulnerable, just like what we're doing right here. And I'm pretty sure it's connecting with a lot of people. So for me, being vulnerable, being open, telling people my faults, man, it's a beautiful. And the thing about sports that I love so much, it taught me how to accept failure in public. Like everybody will see that, oh, I may have dropped the pass, you know, in that stadium. Not quite often, but you get what I'm saying. You know? Nah. But you get what I'm saying. Like, so sports helped me understand that it's okay to fail in public and you can always have another day to remake it and things of that nature. So as far as mental health and the stigma, I'm over it now that I have kids because I need them to see me being emotional. I need to, and that's one of my biggest faults. I tried to be, especially with my partner, I tried to be too hard and not showing as much affection to her as she needed. And it created so much resentment initially. And I still deal with problems with that because growing up, I didn't have affection, you know, like I wanted to from, you know, I didn't have a father in my house. Like, I didn't grow up with my father. I don't even know what that dynamic looks like as far as a mother and a, you know, I had my stepfather, but a lot of times that dynamic wasn't there. And so affection for me is a problem. And so I'm working through it, and I understand that was the biggest mistake for me. And something I'm continuously working on is being more open with her, because she understands that I have my moods. Times I feel on top of the world. Sometimes I don't want to talk to nobody. I'm a natural introvert. And so being open, especially to her, my partner, and my kids, it makes me feel like everything is okay.
Yeah, I mean, the stigma has always been there from the beginning, and especially, and it's culturally too, and each culture is different, but for me, speaking on the Polynesian culture, is like you just kept everything in, and you figure it out. You don't say anything to anyone. It's up to you to figure it out. And I got over that very quickly when I checked myself into uni and figured out, okay, you know what, this isn't normal, and really began opening up and sharing my story with teammates and people, and started to understand, like, wait, And like, I'm in the same boat as you, and then you come to realize that people around you are feeling or going through some similar emotions, and that's where you connect and you form those relationships. And so just being over the stigma for me too, especially after having kids, it's just like my babies are everything. Like you can come to me at your lowest low and at your highest high. I had a family member, a nephew of mine down south, recently just ran away from his family. He's dealing with this drama between his parents. Went missing overnight. Was coming up on 24 hours before they filed the police report. But I had blasted it through social media. If anybody sees this person, please be on the lookout. Anyways, we found him. My brother, he's sitting with him at a gas station and trying to talk him through the situation. And he's frustrated as can be. And so I get into the car and I sit in the front seat and I turn around to him and just tell him how much I love him. And I said, look, when I was your age, I did the same thing. I ran away, but when your dad found me, he actually beat the crap out of me, which you're pretty lucky. You got it pretty good today, so you should be happy about that. And he laughed, but it's just like, but I totally understand where you're coming from, and you just got to let them know and let people know just how much you love them and just feeling loved.
And one thing, I'm sorry, you brought up a good point about this. And mental health, I take so much pride in it. I'm not a professional or anything, but I take pride in it. So I talk about it often. But I mentioned earlier about my father. I didn't grow up with my father, and a lot of people don't know that I'm actually a junior. Nobody knows that. I'm Kenneth Scott the Jr. And so growing up, my dad in Houston, Texas, he was sort of like a celebrity. He was famous. They called my dad the great Kenneth Scott. And it's kind of ironic because a lot of times people call me the great, and I'm like, dang, I'm not my dad. You know what I'm saying? And I always, for so long, I judged him for the decisions that he made because he had a choice to keep on being famous or come take care of your kid and your mom who's sick. And so I always held it against him, like, you chose fame over your family. And so I held that resentment for so long until the point where I had children myself. And I remember a specific conversation my mom had with me and was like, you're going to regret one day where you don't form a relationship with your father. And so when my mom passed, I was like, you know what? He's the only parent I got left. And so I had a hard conversation with him, and it was a conversation where he finally opened up. And so to me, I didn't know the depth of what my dad had gone through. So he was a famous celebrity, did hair for everybody, famous. It got to a point where all that was gone. He lost his identity. His family turned against him. His father passed away. Nobody was there. Me and my mother moved to California. He was alone. The only thing he was able to do was turn to drugs. And so that drugs ultimately led him to affiliation with gangs, which led to him affiliation in prison. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't take the opportunity to ask him and be open and vulnerable with him and have those moments. Because for so long, I thought he just didn't want me. But it turned out that it wasn't that way at all. He didn't have nowhere to turn to. And I think a lot of people with mental health, I wouldn't say issues or problems or challenges, but I see a lot of people who are dealing with those situations feel like there's nobody to turn to. But there always is. There's someone willing to listen. And so you just got to be brave enough to say it. That's really it. Just be brave.
I'm going to add to what he said because people break the stigma. Mm-hmm. People. When you're vulnerable, that's extraordinarily valuable and it makes you available. Like when you're available to connect with someone else, like, okay, I'll be vulnerable. It's like, okay, I'll be vulnerable. Next thing you know, it's like, do we just become best friends? It's like, think of the best friend you have in your life. Like your best friends are like, you're like, I'm horrible, I suck. You're like, I feel the same way too. Let's go hang out. Like, it's just this crazy connection, and that's what some of the best friends I made here at this campus were with athletes. I sucked at math, and someone was good at math. We studied together. Next thing we know, we're like buddies hanging out. We still talk to this day. We had nothing in common. They're from Boston. They didn't play sports, and it's such a relief when you can be vulnerable because that's what kills the mental health issues. Like when you can relate, it kills the hate. Any prejudgments or hates or discrimination you have towards someone, next thing you know, you work with that someone, you study together, and next thing you're like, I better change my perspective. I better look at mental health differently. I better look at that race differently, that community differently.
I think we had another question over on this side and also over on that side. Over here, right here in the front.
She get all the attention.
Okay.
Here.
I just want to say thank you for being vulnerable with us. I know that's kind of hard, especially when it's a big group and then it's just y'all. Yeah, I know. It is hard. But my question was, what's some advice for students who also have like that responsibility at home, who are first gen, and can't exactly go home for that kind of support, and is like, I have this responsibility. What do you do? Like, what do you suggest for us? What kind of advice do you have for us?
My advice is something. It's funny that you asked that question. I was talking to a young person who I'm their therapist yesterday, and this young person came from a different country, and Venezuela to be exact. And they were telling me how they missed their family because they had to leave very quickly. It was a bad situation. And so they had family here. They've been living here for a while, and they're saying like they just feel so alone. They don't feel like they have anyone they can go to, and they have to keep it strong. They have to work to help their aunt. That's like they have a lot of responsibility at this young age. And I told this young person, I said, you can create your own tribe. Because human beings, we're social creatures. And if we don't feel that we have something to offer our family and friends, like if we know we have a talent, like let's say you're funny or you're a good musician, that brings pride and honor to your family or your group or your tribe. I'm using tribe like because our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. And when you don't have a tribe, that might mean you need to create your own. Look for the other people in life that have like-minded thoughts and feelings. Share your own thoughts and feelings with other people, and next thing you know, someone will like, wait a second, that person's different. And then you might have another person in your tribe, another person in your tribe. How many people here feel like your family is like your friends are like family? Right? Like the reason why that is because they are your family in that regard, that when you have a tribe, you can do a lot of things because we all have heard that saying, there's strength in numbers. So unfortunately and fortunately, when you're alone, you have to seek out other human beings to collectively come together, and you're going to have the best ideas when you have better connections. Like connection creates the best innovation. So find your own tribe, but if you can't find one, make it.
Mic drop. But to add on to that, which is amazing, I'm going to kind of build the foundation from what he was saying. So when you talk about adding your own tribe, one of the great things the University of Utah football team had did, and Nate can attest to this too because we were a part of it, we had leadership retreats where we would go to a cabin out in nowhere, where it's just a leadership group. And we're talking about, because they're not our family, but we're a family within our tribe. And so it allowed us to express those vulnerabilities. And I'll tell you a cool story about a certain individual. This certain individual name is Keith McGill. He's a really cool dude, man. When he first started at the University of Utah, he was a 5-star recruit coming in here. He had some challenges at first, getting too acclimated with his teammates. Nobody understood him, thought he was a hothead, thought he was just, arrogant and things of that nature. And it got to a point where he went to the leadership retreat. And Morgan Scally, one of the coaches I respect, he asked a crazy question. He said, how many people in here knows his daughter's name? And all of us look at each other like, he's like, how are we supposed to be family, get to know each other? We don't even know his daughter's name. And so from that point on, about building this tribe, getting to know your tribe, even though there aren't family physically, but building that tribe, you become family and able to express your vulnerabilities. And after that moment, Keith McGill obviously went off to get drafted in the NFL, and it kind of changed his whole trajectory of where he's, currently was to where he is now. So building that tribe is super important, not only for you, but your tribe too also escalates as well as you continue to build it.
Well, I almost forgot, let me add one more thing before Nate goes. Take classes that are a little risky for you. Things that you're like, I'm not good at this. Step outside of your comfort zone. I took a sign language class one time here at the U. In that sign language class, I met people and they go, hey, let's take this outdoor cooking and camping class. I'm like, are we camping on the beach? So I don't like the mountains. I was like, I don't want to go to the mountains. Oh, come on, you can do it. And I'm like, here I am, this football player, and I'm all scared, right? So we go out this outdoor cooking and camping classes. We sat around the bonfire. I made friends with people I didn't know. And an interesting thing about a tribe, look at a tribe from the historical perspective. One person's good at picking berries. One person can fish. One person can make blankets. And then you matter because you give something to someone else. They give something to you. And so I found at the U, just taking classes and stepping outside of I'm a cool jock, it was the best thing I ever did. So being outside my own comfort zone allowed me to make people, meet tribe, people I could make my own tribe with, and I could share with them my talents, and they could share with me theirs.
I think you make a great point right there, Dave. You in your tribe, ultimately you complement one another, right? And when you're at your lowest low, you should be able to lean on those in your tribe, or at your highest high, right? You should be able to share that experience with them. For me, I've learned that over the past 8 years because, again, I've always the foundation of my family, giving them money from when I was in high school, college, even in the pros. But right before that transition in the pros, I really had to cut it off. I had to say no. You got to learn to say no, right? Because they're going to ask things of you and ask you to do things that you feel deep down inside that you owe it to them. You don't, right? This life, I've learned, like, this is the only life you have, and this is the only opportunity that I have to play in the NFL. And if I want to make the most out of it, I have to keep my circle small, I have to keep my tribe small, and I have to pursue and take advantage of this little window that I have, right? And there are going to be people that pull you back and don't allow you to have that kind of success or get that kind of momentum. And if you feel like they aren't helping you, my biggest thing is always you just got to learn to say no. And that was so hard for me because I had to point the blame to other people, which they were happy with it, and it just worked out. Like, well, I can't, my financial advisor, money's tied up here, or contact my agent, you got to do this, right? You just kind of delegate it and blame it on other people. Like, well, it's just how it is. Oh, my professor actually wants me to come do something at the union tonight. It's so weird, right? I can't make it home. Or I just point at other people and just take that pressure and that burden off of you. And again, I think the tribe is the biggest thing, right? Because I've done a really good job over the years of just keeping my circle small and finding people that I trust that have the same vision as me and want to accomplish those things together.
Very great question. I think we had a question up here in the front, in the red, and then in the gray.
Yeah, so my question was, whenever you were faced with doubt, not just in deciding to pursue football, but other sort of careers, like how did you go about facing that doubt?
To be honest, I didn't deal with it well when I was your age. Every time I had self-doubt, I just pretended I didn't have it. How did I get better as I got older? I started telling people that I had self-doubt. Sometimes, have you ever heard that saying, the truth will set you free? Sometimes there's certain truths we don't want to admit about ourselves. I had problems with academics. For me, I struggled with things like math and science. And I used to always say, those things don't matter. It doesn't matter. When am I ever use that in my real life? And then I had to admit that it's not about whether I'm going to use it or not. Like, I need to try to illuminate my blind spots. I need to be like, I'm insecure because, to be totally honest, math to me, I felt like math put me in the friend zone my whole life. I was like, will you go out with me? Math's like, no, you're getting a D. So I'll just be your friend, right? And so for me, I just go, I suck at math, and I use the tutors here. My senior year, it's like I had a team of tutors helping me. They're like, oh man, we got to teach this guy again. I took statistics 3 times. I kept on getting like an injury and surgery, and I kept on, I can't go to class. My self-doubt was like, if I don't admit that I need help, I will never believe that I could do it. And the third time, I passed it on my own. I mean, I had the help, of course, but like facing the self-doubt, being honest with yourself frees you from having to hide it. Shame grows in the darkness. If we hide the things we're ashamed of, we can never face them. If we illuminate them and put light on it by talking to a friend, asking for help, then all of a sudden those things don't have as much weight over it. And it's like, no, I can slay this dragon. So, like I said, I didn't do with it well, but I've learned that throughout the years.
That's an awesome point. When it comes to self-doubt, kind of going back to what Nate was talking about, in the world of sports and football, it afforded us the opportunity that if a certain position is weak, you can lean on the beliefs of others or the motivation or the drive of others to be able to kind of balance everything out. And that's sort of the same thing with me. For me, I'm a very passionate, energetic guy. So if someone's doubting in that area or don't have enough energy, then they can look towards me in regards to gaining that energy plug, right? So it's just, for me, it's like, okay, identifying, okay, where is my self-doubt lie at, whether it's in school or personal life, and figuring out, okay, who is good at it, so that I can lean on their beliefs and borrow their beliefs so that I can be competent myself and kind of balance it out. So learning from others, that's what I always tell people, learn from the mistakes of others so that you don't have to experience them all yourself, because you ain't live long enough to experience them all yourself. So that's a real key.
Yeah, those are 2 good answers, and I won't say too much, but just the biggest thing for me is just finding people you're close with, who you can connect with, who you can trust, and bounce those things off of. Because, I mean, I look at it like, you know, after a game, you go to the drawing board, okay, what happened here? You know, and what could you have done better? And just like, okay, understanding the process a little more, I think gives you that confidence going forward. Like, okay, I know I can handle this. If it ever comes up again or whatever it may be, I know I have the tools in my bag to take on that challenge or problem, whatever it may be.
You know, I just remembered a saying a mentor of mine told me about self-doubt. I should have said this before. He said, self-doubt is not a sin, it's a necessity. He said, when you doubt yourself, you're scared, you don't know what to do. But how are you supposed to summon courage and bravery if you're not scared of something first? If you don't fear something, if you don't doubt yourself, you can't summon courage and bravery. And he started giving me all these examples of great people in the world that made huge changes. And he's like, there's a story of they didn't believe they were good enough. They were worried that they were going to fail, or maybe they'd failed multiple times. So I just always remember that self-doubt is not a sin, it's a necessity. I'm not bad because I have self-doubt. It's just part of that human condition.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. That was a great question.
Yeah, really good question.
Now, this guy has a question, but I don't know. We need to vet this question first.
Yeah.
He does have a question. As the microphone's being handed over, just a comment that came from the audience online. The comment was, "This is incredible. Thank you for your vulnerability and willingness to share."
Thank you, whoever
That's
brought
nice.
that in.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. You talked a lot tonight about major life transition. You talked about some planned life transitions like a college career to an NFL career or fatherhood, and you talked about unplanned life transition, like example would be moving from California to Utah, or sometimes fatherhood, or maybe we're talking about getting traded from a team or being told that your football career is over. And Dave, you talked about a period of numbness that oftentimes accompanies major life transition. Having successfully made it through some real major life transitions, the three of you, what can we do to help speed up or recover from that period of numbness?
Yeah, well, interesting about numbness from my experience is that imagine like your emotions are like a light switch, right? When your emotions are on, you're feeling good, right? The light switch is on. And I used to always think that if I was going through a hard time, I could just turn off those emotions about the hard time, but I could be happy over here, and it wasn't going to bleed over. It wasn't going to affect those other things. And I found out that once you turn off the emotions, like when I was going through my deepest parts of depression and self-doubt, I turn off my emotions, but I also turn off my availability for so many other things as well, too. So when I'm counseling people as a mental health professional, by the way, this is not mental health advice. I'm just giving you like an example. When I see someone that's numb, I'm actually more worried about the person who's not feeling anything at all. The person that doesn't feel, that concerns me more, because it's not like they don't care. It's not like they haven't tried. It's they've tried over and over and over again. Then their brain starts to say, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Just flip that light switch, light and life switch sometimes, and just give up. Those people stop showing up for their job. They stop showing up for their relationships. They stop showing up for so many, like Nate said, they're not as present as they used to be. And I don't know if you've ever been in a friendship or intimate relationship with someone who's just checked out, numb. That's not them. They're going through something very difficult. And so for them, I really want to hear what they say. But for me, I know it seems like we keep on saying the same answer for it, but it's true. I had to ask for help. And when you're numb and you got no more energy, and then someone's like, what's wrong? Are you okay? It's always, I'm fine, right? I saw a study one time. What's the number one lie people say? I'm fine. That's the biggest lie. People say, I'm fine. And then when you see someone smiling, they got tears coming down, like, that don't look like you're fine. You're smiling and crying at the same time. So when I wasn't fine, I'd be like, I'm fine. And then I'd be like, you know what? I'm not fine. And as soon as you admit that, this cathartic reaction happens. I liken it to food poisoning. When you have food poisoning, your body has this natural defense mechanism. You throw up the food. But as soon as you throw up the food, I don't know about you, but I don't like throwing up. When I threw up one time with food poisoning, I didn't instantly go, okay, now I'm ready to go out and have fun. It took me a couple days to come back. But once you get the poison out of the building, it starts the healing process. So by saying, you know what, I'm not fine, I do need help, or I'm struggling, it gets the poison out. Now, you may not feel better immediately, but it allows you to start the healing process. And that's how I've been able to get through my numbness. Because, hey, even though I don't struggle in the way that I did before, to sit here and say that I don't ever get down and depressed and have anxiety and fears and self-doubt, that would be a lie. Everyone's going to have that. It's part of what we all go through. But asking for help, it triggers something. And once that happens, then our body's like, okay, we're back online. We can go again. When we're numb, that's when it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm slowly starting to lose belief that I matter. And human beings, we need to know that we matter to people. If we don't feel like we matter, that's the beginning of the end.
Love it. So for me, when it comes to numbness, I figure it out as, okay, maybe the lens I'm viewing it through is not the right perspective. And so maybe I need to view it from a different angle. And so when it comes to numbness, I try to change the perspective and the way I'm viewing the situation. And so I believe it was a couple years ago, someone had spoke to me about a checklist of items when you are going through a certain situation in life, how to change your perspective on it. And they said the number one thing is like, are you aware of the situation? Are you aware that you are feeling numb? I'm like, yeah. Do you have the desire to change the situation? Yeah. Do you have the knowledge? I don't have all the knowledge, but I can take the steps in order to gain the knowledge or do the knowledge, receive it. And he said, do you have the ability? I'm like, yes, I have the ability. I don't want to feel numb anymore. He said, well, now you have to hold yourself accountable now to reinforce that positive behavior, to stop looking at it from the lens that you're viewing it through, because that's going to keep you where you are. And so for anybody that's feeling numbness, I would challenge them to look at that checklist that I, just written out or explained out, and hopefully it will help them in their situation when they're feeling numb.
You hit the nail on the head. It's the checklist. Even for me, till this day, it's like my wife will sense it. The kids will sense it. I'm a little, not as patient as normal. I'm lashing out. And, once I go through that checklist myself, I'm like, you know what? I was like, babe, I think I need to go see my doc. She's like, yeah, I think you need to too. And just going to someone you trust, one, my wife, and she can be a little more harsh than normal. And she's like, yeah, you actually need to get out of here and go today. But it's real, you got that checklist. And when you can have that self-evaluation, like, okay, these are the emotions I'm feeling, it's like, okay, then you kind of go to the right people and you get those answers that you may need.
Another thing to point out, man, if you have a strong partner in your corner, like man, I ain't gonna lie. I know I talk about checklists, but I get checked. Like, hold on, like, who you think you talking to like that? Like, I'm like, oh, shoot. I just have to throw it in because, having a strong partner that can hold you accountable, they going to make sure, they going to check you and make sure that you're on, straight and narrow. So I had to throw that in. Shout out to you.
Yeah, we all need people that we can trust their observation of us because we can't see ourselves. We don't know we don't have a camera following us around to see if we have a certain look or disposition about us. So if you have some trusted people in your life and they say, hey, I'm starting to notice something, don't be so quick to dismiss it. Because the people who are in our corner, they wouldn't say anything if it wasn't for our benefit. And so trusting in people, opening up to people, having that checklist, I think those are great ideas. Not ideas, those are proven. And I think everything we're saying, this shouldn't be rocket science to you guys. When you guys hear this, we kind of all intuitively know complex problems kind of have to start with simple solutions. Just as like, man, maybe I am tripping. Or maybe I am not being myself. Yeah, I haven't gone on a walk all winter. No wonder I'm depressed, right? There's a lot of simple things. We think that my life's so complex, I need to make $1 million to make my pain go away. No, you may just need to call a friend, go on a walk, eat something. You students, your child all day long is like, I haven't even eaten today. It's like, no wonder your blood sugar's low and you're not feeling good, right?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, while I have the mic and I've got the three of you being so vulnerable, perhaps you could share a little light on fear and anxiety about the future. You talked about concussions. You've suffered major injury. You guys all look great today, but you're young, right? There's a lot of thoughts out there about CTE. There's thoughts about mobility. What kind of feelings do you have around fear and anxiety for the future?
Just from an athletic perspective, right, with the CTE and depression and all that stuff, it's kind of what you signed up for, right? And a lot of that's out of your control, but over the years, I've just learned, again, the foods to put into my body, the mental health side and how to strengthen my mind, and just meditation has always been something. I think one of my favorite classes is probably bad, but Tai Chi yoga when I was here. Tai Chi yoga, it was so smooth. I loved it. But and just as I go through this life, I learn more and more. Again, my grandma passed away last week. She was 80 years old, rest her soul. She had 45 grandkids and 125 great grandkids. And that woman was the hardest worker that I know, but also just full of life. And one thing I took from her is just having an attitude of gratitude. She was thankful for everything in her life. And everyone that I come across, each one of you individually, you all have a story. You're all special in your own way. I'm thankful for everyone that has been in my life because they've had a big impact. And I mean, there's so many things, again, that are out of your control, but if I can just stay in the moment and control what I can control today, and then, you know, when tomorrow comes, we'll figure that out.
That is so crucial. The art of gratitude. It kind of reminds me of, so about a couple weeks ago, I was heading into the office to go do some work, and as I go into the office, there's this bridge, and under this bridge, there's a homeless guy, and he's sitting there on a mattress. But it's not just your typical mattress. This guy, every morning I see him. He makes his bed. He has a container box. Again, he's homeless. He has a container box, and he's folding his clothes, putting it as if where he's at. And also, this guy, he sits on his bed, and he takes out his Bible, and he starts reading it. And I thought that was so impactful because a lot of times, especially myself, you know, the times I get fear or anxiety is because I'm yearning for something more than what I currently have, and I'm never experiencing the gratitude that I have and the stuff that I have now and being present. And so looking at that homeless man, it immediately gave me gratitude for everything that I have, health, a roof over my head, all those items. And I remember going up to because I ain't gonna lie, I seen him every day, and I asked him, like, why are you, like, not why are you so happy, but like, what gives you like the energy and the zest and the spirit to, no matter your situation, be happy? Like you're under a bridge, on the mattress, reading the Bible. He said, because I'm present is the reason why I'm able to be okay with more. Yes, I want more. Everybody wants more. But he said, I'm okay with being in my present form. And he said, a lot of people, they're not okay with themselves and always yearning for, and that's where all the challenges lies personally for them, because they're always yearning for more, not for themselves, but to appease other people. And I thought that was so crazy to me. I'm like, man, he's true. And so now every morning I have a reminder, because I see him every day. Like, man, just be grateful. Be grateful you get to go in the office. Be grateful you get to have a family you can go back to. Be grateful, because he said the one thing, the reason why he ended up on that homeless corner is because he was trying to do everything for everybody else instead of himself. And he ended up homeless under a bridge. And I was like, wow. And so just the art of gratitude, just like he's saying, and being loving for the things that you have will not allow all those emotions and those feelings to be presented to you.
Two things for me. One thing for basic fears and anxiety, like when I'm just having like a little bit of fear and a little anxiety, I always try to remember that structure equals safety. When I wake up in the morning early or on time, I don't start my day off like I'm late, I'm behind, and I'm running around. I feel like I'm trying to catch up. So if I go to bed at a good time, if I drink water, like basic simple things, and I start my day off and I have it planned out. When I'm just like, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing that day. Sometimes I can pull it off, but I tend to notice that gives me a little bit more fear and anxiety. Another thing is, when I have fear and anxiety, it's really heavy, I got to stop. I like to meditate as well, but I can't remember who told me this, but I just started doing this, and I teach this to my clients, is I ask myself, what is this telling me? What is this trying to tell me? Because pain, if we didn't feel pain, we probably wouldn't be alive today. Like, we wouldn't have made it this age. Pain is trying, it's a notification, like I said earlier, it's trying to tell us something. My fear and anxiety, even if I'm just tripping out and I'm overthinking things, well, if I say, well, what's my fear and anxiety trying to tell me? Maybe I'm lacking structure. Maybe I haven't confessed something. Maybe I'm holding back in something and I'm not putting out my best effort. Or maybe I'm grieving from a really big issue in my life, and I'm just avoiding it, and I'm not dealing with it. So if you look at these things as, what is this trying to tell me? It turns it from, what can I do? What's wrong with me? Because that's an easy thing to go. It's like, what's wrong with me? Why do I always feel this way? To like, maybe this is trying to tell me something. Maybe I should pay closer attention to something that I just been so busy, I just forgot to look inside a little bit deeper. I know some of them. By the way, thank you, sir, for your great questions. I appreciate it. That was great. Thank you. So, you need a microphone over there?
Can we make time for
You're
one
good?
more quick question?
Just one more quick.
This
Yeah,
is
she's
the
been waiting
last
so
question.
long. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. Oh, you brought it. Thanks. Okay. So my question is, especially for Kaz and K. Scott, you guys had sort of a different projectile of your life than maybe originally anticipated. So how do you sort of deal with your plan B becoming your plan A and recognizing that it is still as valuable as it of a life, you know? And then also, for you on the end, how do you deal with like that perfectionism aspect of like always wanting to be a high achiever?
I'm just a competitor, you know? So when I got the opportunity, it's just like, this is what I've always wanted and what I've thrived for. And to do it the past 8 years has not been easy by any means. I was in Cleveland for 3 years. I had 3 general managers, 3 head coaches, 3 defensive coordinators, every year having to prove myself. From there, I was released going into my 4th year. I went between Buffalo and Kansas City. After Kansas City, I had a tryout, and I tore my calf in the tryout. And all they gave me was ice and crutches and set me on the airplane, right? Then going into the next year, I'm in Seattle for 2 weeks, then they cut me. And then I go to Miami for training camp, and I make it all the way to training camp, make the team officially, then they actually cut me home for 12 weeks, then I make it to, so the journey's there, right? That's it, this part of life, the ups, the downs, and there's gonna be a lot of downs, but as long as you keep getting back up and you keep fighting and finding your purpose, right? And I found my purpose from the very beginning. It's like, I wanna be the best, no one's gonna stop me, and I'm gonna do this for my wife and my kids, and ultimately because I love this more than anything. And even though there were some heartaches and some highs, like no matter what, I always fought through it because of the love I had for the game.
Well, and also, too, I think what she was saying, too, because he can be vulnerable. I want to see him answer that a little bit more vulnerable. Do you know being a high achiever is a blessing and a curse? Your superpower is your kryptonite. You just said you got people, by the way, I had older brothers in the NFL. I'm so glad I never made it to the NFL because nobody asked me and my family for money. People are always asking me, my brothers, for money, including me. So you have to support family, do all this stuff like that, be a high achiever. But when you're wearing your name on your jersey and that day ends, that's a tough day, man. It's like that pressure of all your family, everybody, not just financially, but needing you. That's kind of selfishly. I want to hear you answer, like, how do you deal with that?
Transition?
That, well, not just transition, but dealing with the stress of being a high achiever. Because when you're a high achiever, guess what people want? You to achieve for them too.
Exactly. And it just goes back to my answer, is just saying no. It's like I had to establish that foundation from the very beginning because I knew the trajectory and where I was headed and what I want to accomplish. They were just weight on my back and they were just dragging me down at every turn. I mean, I love my family more than anything, and I've established that. I'm like, look, this is what I'm doing. I can't help you. I mean, there are times they show up to my games, I didn't even know they were there asking for money. Like, I'm in training camp in the heat of summer in Miami, humidity 100%, and I walk out and I just hear them yelling my name to the right, and I had no idea they were there. And it's just like, and not to bash on them, I love them, but it's just like, no, you can't do that. I don't need that right now, right? So I go say hello, go back, practice, go see them, and what's the first thing they ask me? They ask me for money. She's like, look, we have the taxi waiting outside. It's been there for a few hours, and we need a hotel room. Can you give us some money? I'm just like, granted, this is my mom and my grandma. I can't just leave them out here in the streets of Miami. Like, of course. I'm like, okay, so let me go get my wallet, get ATM, and give you some money. Like, come on. Like, you know, there were moments, but at the same time, it was like, I've also established that to where, like, I could say no, but when you show up like that, I mean, sometimes it's hard to say no.
Well, it's really hard to say no, especially growing up in the Polynesian community. Certainly you guys may have been raised in families. Like, family's everything. You always have to help family. You always have to be there for them. But I think kind of what you're saying, at least what I took from it, it's like sometimes you love people, but you can't save them. You know, and that's hard for people who are high achievers. Like, you want to save everybody, you want to help everybody, sometimes you gotta help yourself.
Exactly. And it just goes back to my story. And I told my wife this today as I was coming here. I was like, the trauma that I went through as a kid and the relationship with my mom and my brother and my grandma from when I was so young, right? Like to witness the domestic abuse and being a victim of it, and to go through everything we went through to where I am now, it's like I almost felt like I was obligated, like I owed them, right? Because we went through this together, through you getting beaten by your husband and this and that. It's like we went through this together. I'm supposed to help you. I'm supposed to help you up. But at the same time, it's like I don't owe you anything. It's just like I need to do this for me, and I need to do this for my current family.
And I know the other questions you asked for both of us was, okay, you had a plan A. How do you transition, keep that same energy to plan B? Did you want to go first? Or? So for the people that know me, they know I love the process. When football, for me, I seen it as, I always had some type of setback. I'll get up to a point where everything's good, get injured, have to come right back down. Learn how to walk again, learning that process, being told that if you don't rehab correctly, you'll never play the game of football again. So I had to start from the beginning, and I create steps to get back. And so when I look at plan A, plan B, plan C, whatever, my main thing is like, okay, what's the goal of what my plans are going to be? All right. And then from the goal, understand where I'm currently at reality-wise. And in between, the difference between it, okay, what steps do I need to take in order to accomplish those said goals? Because for me, the outcome is the outcome, right? It's going to happen, but if I put the passion, the energy, the zest, the resilience in it, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. And so as long as I keep that goal and understand where I am right now and making my ways and strides towards the steps, knowing that each step I have to keep on going, keep being resilient, and knowing also what am I willing to sacrifice to get through it, no matter if it's plan A, plan C, plan D, or plan E, whatever it is, as long as I can control what I can control, like Nate was saying earlier, it's up to the man above, like what the outcome would be. But as long as I put in what I know I can put in, I'm gonna be good. That's the way I control it. So I hope that answered your question. So when it came to me just switching careers, for me, it's like, okay, I'm hopping in another car, you know what I'm saying, and going to this destination. And so I never looked at it like a bad thing. I just always looked at it as it's another challenge for me. For some reason, I just love it. Like I'm getting right now chills, just like, I don't know. For some reason, it drives me. So I hope to answer your question.
That other car, the Bentley?
Ferrari. all them tinted and all.
Hey, you also got a Buick in there too, right?
All them. Classic, all that.
Hey, so I'll just do mine really quickly. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Right? We know that in sports, in life, you could start off going, this is my plan. I don't know about you guys, but when I was 16, I didn't like the same things when I was 18. And when I was 18, I liked the same things when I was 22, and on and on and on. So you may start down a path, and that path, maybe your plan B was supposed to be your plan A. Maybe. Maybe when I graduated in economics and consumer studies from the University of Utah, and now I'm a family therapist talking about feelings all day long, maybe I wasn't supposed to be a CEO, big-time businessman. Maybe my talents were supposed to be somewhere else, and that was just part of the journey. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question.
I'm sure that we could keep asking questions all day long, and I think you guys are so passionate about the topic, you could continue to talk all day long about this.
I think we have no problem talking, period, as you can tell.
That's true.
If y'all want to answer one more, not just playing.
All right, let's give a big round of applause for our panel today. Now, before we end, I think we can seriously say that we can add one additional thing to these three gentlemen's resumes, and that is we can add that we've been instructed today, that they are instructors. Professor Orchard, thank you. Professor Scott, Professor Cause, thank you. So thank you. And like I tell my students, you always take good notes, and I took a page and a half, but I wanted to just highlight a few takeaways before we wrap up. So, first of all, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Your superpower can be your kryptonite. Find your purpose. Structure equals safety. Have an attitude of gratitude, art of gratitude. Complex problems start with simple solutions. We need to know that we all matter, and the number one lie we hear is, I'm fine. Self-doubt is not necessarily a weakness or a sin. It's a necessity. Lean on each other's beliefs. The truth will set you free. Keep your tribe small. Lean on your tribe. And I think we got find an OG, find an old guy at the U. Original gangster. And the last thing, I think, last three things, heartfelt. Kenneth, thank you. It's important. It's okay to let people see you cry. Yes. And have your daughter wipe your tears. Cause I wrote down, this was probably one of my biggest takeaways. Let people know how happy you are when you're with them, and share that. I thought that was really insightful. And then I learned today what Fa Samoa means, and I think this is really the wrap-up to today. We're all in one, and we're all together. So Nate, thank you for that, and appreciate that. So if you want to learn more, this link will be shared to all those who attended. So the good news is if you didn't take these good notes, you'll have a chance to review it and watch the three professors online via our YouTube link. And then also, if you want to get better connected and expand your network, again, I would be remiss as president of U Alumni if I didn't tell you to join our Forever Utah Network, which is our network here at the U to connect and be better connected. So thank you for your evening. We have some food and snacks to go. Come on back. Thanks for joining, and go Utes.